Hey guys, this is Mrs. Raro and this is a video on factoring. So in this video, I'm going to show you, or rather in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to solve quadratic equations by factoring methods. So let's start. So first, let's begin to identify what is a quadratic equation. And a quadratic equation is an equation that can be written in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where this coefficient a, this coefficient b, and this coefficient c are real numbers, real coefficients. And this coefficient of a cannot equal 0, and x is the unknown variable. So all the quadratic equations, as much as possible, you want them to be in standard form in order for you to factor, in order for you to solve by factoring, okay? So to practice that, we must have it in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So here's an example of a quadratic equation not in standard form, and in order to put it in standard form, you need to bring the plus 1 over to the other side. So that's why in this form, there is a 5x squared plus 3x minus 1 equals 0. Right, and in this form, although you would put the x squared over to the right side because that's one term that you're moving versus 2, it actually poses a greater risk of mistake if you keep the x squared negative. So if you have the x squared that's negative. So you don't want the x squared to be negative. You want it to be positive as much as possible. Therefore, you should move the 6x over to the left side, and you should move the negative 7 over to the left side. That's why in standard form, you have an x squared minus 6x plus 7 equals 0. All right, so again, you want to try to avoid x squared being negative. Here we have to FOIL, right? So they use a method of foiling or distributive property in order to get it into standard form. So 2x times x is 2x squared, 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x, and then 1 times x is x, and then minus 5 is equal to negative 10. And then move the negative 10 over to the other side, and that's how we get the 2x squared minus 9x plus 5 equals 0. Okay, so now let's try to pause this video to see if you can understand standard form. Okay, so the correct choice here is B, because we have 6 times x, which is 6x squared, 6 times negative 1, which is minus 6x, equals 12. But remember, we have to have it equal to 0, so we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. So that is why the standard form is 6x squared minus 6x minus 12 equals 0. Okay, now let's talk about factors. So factors are expressions that are multiplied together to produce a product. So for example, if I take 4x and multiply it by the group of x minus 5, we get 4x squared minus 20x. So this is considered your product. And this 4x, okay, sorry about that, is considered your factor. And x minus 5 also considered a factor. So when we look at this, we can identify that 4x is a factor of 4x squared minus 20x, and then x minus 5 is also a factor of 4x squared minus 20x. All right, so same thing here. If I multiply these two, this is the product, while we say x plus 1 is a factor of x squared minus 3x minus 4, and x minus 4 is also a factor of x squared minus 3x minus 4. Okay, so by definition, that is the meaning of factor. So we do this process called factor by GCF, right? So GCF is the greatest common factor. It is the greatest term that you can divide all the terms by in the polynomial. Polynomial means multiple terms. Okay, so in this case, in letter A, we have 2x squared minus 4. Okay, so to identify the GCF, you have to identify the greatest common factor. What is the number or variable or term that could be that could divide both divided by both 2x squared minus 4. All right, and then the GCF here is going to be 2, because I could divide 2x divided by 2, and I could divide negative 4 divided by 2. Right, so if you have the GCF, you can factor it out. That means 2 is a factor of 2x squared minus 4. Now let's try to figure out the other factor. So to do this, you can either say, well, what would you multiply 2 by so you can get 2x squared? okay? So that's x squared is what you would multiply it by. All right, and same thing here, same idea. What would you multiply to 2 so you can get -4, which is -2? Okay, so we say that 2 is a factor of 2x squared minus 4, and x squared minus 2 is also a factor of 2x squared minus 4. And the GCF is +2. Now let's take a look at these terms here. We have 8x cubed minus 4x squared minus 16x. And you have this meme. Is it the greatest common factor or is it just a good enough common factor? So you might say, okay, what about a 2? A 2 is a common factor, but not the greatest common factor, right? Even 2x is not also a common factor, but not the greatest common factor. All right, so to help you, we want to identify the factors of 8x cubed, 4x squared, and an x, okay? And then as you go, it'll get a lot better. So 8 is made up of 4 and 2, right? And then 4 is, it's by factor tree, 2 times 2. And then x cubed, that means there's 3 x's being multiplied together. All right, I'm going to use a different color. 4 is 2 times 2, and then x squared is x times x. And then 16, whoa, I need 4 of these. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Sorry about that. And then x times 2, and then x is just a single x. Okay, so now you kind of want to know, like, what is common? What is the greatest common thing between all these terms? Well, each of them has each of them has at least a common 2 times 2. All right, so there goes that 2 times 2, and there goes that 2 times 2. And each of them also have at least a common x. There goes that common x, and there goes that common x. So therefore, your GCF here is 2 times 2 times x, which is equivalent to 4x. So 4x is the term, not just a number or a coefficient. It's the term that could divide all these terms by. It's the greatest common factor. All right, so if you take out the greatest common factor, we can now figure out what's left. So to get what's left, we can multiply. So what would we multiply 4x by so we can get 8x cubed, right? So that would be 2x squared because 4 times 2 is 8, and x to the first times x to the second power is x to the third power. All right, next term. What would we multiply 4x by so we can get -4x squared? And that answer is -x because 4x times -x is -4x squared. And finally, we would have to put a -4 here because 4x times -4 is equivalent to -16x. So this is its final factored form, okay? All right, let's take a look at letter C. So letter C is not written in standard form, and you'd like it to be written in standard form. So rewrite this as -12x squared and a -14x. Okay, and again, at this point, you want to try to do, if it helps you, use your factor tree. If not, you can use mental math, right? So the GCF here is going to be, right, so -12 is going to be -6 and +2. -6 is -3 times 2, and then x squared is 2 x's. All right, and -14 is -7 times 2, and then a single x. All right, so as you can see here, you have 2 in common and an x in common. So the GCF is 2x. Now here's the problem that I see here. Remember that you want to try to have a positive leading coefficient, so meaning a positive x squared. So if you take out, if right now it's a negative leading coefficient, then and you take out a positive GCF, you're going to end up with a negative inside, and that's not what you want. Okay, you want to try to avoid having a negative inside. So to fix that problem, you have to factor out a -2x. All right, and then watch what happens. So inside, it's going to be a +6x, and then it's also going to be a +7 when you figure out what the terms of inside. Okay. So that in order for you to not have a negative leading coefficient, you have to factor out a negative GCF. All right. Okay, let's try this problem on your own, and let's try to pause it so that you can answer. Okay, so the GCF here is going to be a +2x. And what is left is going to be +x plus 3. Okay, so that is choice C. All right, that is it. Thank you for watching.